Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. This is a continuation of a series of professional learning opportunities that really have been going on. But in the fall, we actually kind of made it a series called Strategies for Success. And we actually have a Bristol YouTube playlist where these recordings will be under. And right now we have 3 recordings from the fall, including time management, one on self-advocacy, and then one on test-taking strategies. And we're continuing that and hopefully allow this playlist to grow. Perhaps while I'm getting this started, Melissa can, if she can find it. If not, we'll share it later. But maybe Melissa can give the link to our YouTube playlist in the chat that you can share with students, staff, whoever. We would really appreciate that. But this is a continuation. And I had noticed that I had some students that were joining me last fall during these, and I noticed that I had some repeat participants. And I thought, you know what? I would really love to get a student's perspective on strategies for success, because just like when we're teaching in the classroom, we can talk all we want and we can give all the knowledge in the world, but our students really learn best from one another. And I think that's a really key element when we can use that reflection time. That is just so powerful, not just for instructors, but also for students, that they're to let them know that they're valued, that they have a lot of worth in their conversations and suggestions and recommendations. So I wanted to take that opportunity to have like a little mini panel, if you will, where we could talk about how we can help build power in our students to advocate for themselves, to recognize that there are services and supports in our college. We have so many healthy resources and departments that want to support our students, but sometimes we don't know what we don't know. And we don't know what to ask if we don't know what we don't know. And we're hoping that today, after addressing just a few things on assertive communication and reaching out, that we'll be able to give some tools and ideas for students across our campus that they can be able to utilize to feel more powerful. And that's really what this is about. So next slide. Let's talk about our learning outcomes for today. And I'm about the power of 3. And it might be because 3 is my favorite number. I'm the 3rd child of my family. I was born on the 3rd. I'm actually the 333rd person in my family lineage line. Not that you need to know that, but you know that now. So maybe that number 3 is just powerful for me. But we do tend to learn in chunks, and 3 is a great number to learn. When we give 3 pieces of information and then take a break and reflect on it, it can be really, really powerful. So today, we are really hoping that we get out of this understanding what effective language is. And when we use the word assertive, we don't want the word assertive to be a negative connotation. We want it to be a proactive use of our communication skills. We want to talk about how we can communicate with instructors, and then knowing where to go or who to go to when we need help. Those are really our 3 big ideas for today. So who are we? You're probably wondering. We were just laughing before we let you in. We had a little chuckle about these pictures because we kind of think these pictures already tell the story of who we are. Some of us might be a little bit more introverted. Some of us might think that we are better with a partner, including a pup. Some of us are just like, hey, they're here for me. So without further ado, today, we have Amanda, myself, Kit, and Melissa, who just introduced, and I would love to give them the floor to also introduce themselves, but I want to start with Amanda.
Yeah, so I'm Amanda. As y'all can see, I'm Amanda. I've been a student here at Bristol Community College off and on since, I want to say September of 2015. Wasn't really quite sure what I wanted to do, so just kind of came in, left a semester, came back another semester, left again. But but now I figured out what I want to do. So I will be graduating this semester to transfer over to Rhode Island College to pursue my bachelor's in early childhood education.
Awesome. And Amanda is one of those repeat participants that I had the pleasure of getting to know. And Kylie, who is with us here, was also one of those repeat participants. So it's awesome having them back. Yes, and congratulations. I agree with our chat. So congratulations on that. Any benchmark that we can get to, we need to congratulate ourselves. We need to honor ourselves. We're always so good about honoring others, but we need to remember to honor ourselves as well. That is so important. I'm Kit Kelleher. I am a learning specialist with the Office of Disability Services. I specifically work in the New Bedford campus, but I also support students across the campuses just because that's who we are. We are a team. There's no I in team, we work together and I love it. I am a relative newbie. I'm almost at my 1-year mark in a couple of days being with Bristol. I'm thrilled to be here, but I have worked with other colleges as well, including being an adjunct faculty at other colleges. And I continue to do that. And it's really nice to get those different college perspectives, but that's a little bit who I am. And that is my beautiful pup, Riley. So hi, Riley.
Hi, everyone. I'll go next. For those who don't know me, my name is Melissa Rogers. I work for the Multicultural Student Center as the Student Activity Officer. And I'm really fortunate to be able to work very closely with students on a regular basis. And I'm really excited about this topic because I think this is one that comes up a lot with students, but kind of the term self-advocacy is confusing even for me at times of what that means. How do I go about that? How do I, come across the way I'm trying to come across? And a lot of conversations I have with students is centered around self-advocacy, and a lot of the times they don't even realize that as well. So I'm really happy that the student success strategies this semester has been kind of coming to this open dialogue, and hopefully we can share tips today, and we can hear a lot of feedback and tips from the audience of what's worked for you and what hasn't as well. So thank you so much for joining.
You brought up great points, Melissa, and thank you for that. And the whole idea is this is a little bit of a different forum for us where we invite our audience today to share, practices. We will keep our eye on the clock and whatnot, but we would love to hear feedback. That was the whole idea of this. You are more than welcome to speak, take yourself off mute, use the chat. I will say this, I'm just gonna self-disclose myself. I have a really hard time when I'm presenting, going back and forth, looking at screens and looking at the chat. So Melissa will kind of keep an eye on the chat for me in case something comes up that was missed. And if I missed it, it wasn't that I was ignoring it was just, that's my issue. So now you know that. So we welcome and invite you guys. And as a matter of fact, let's have a little bit of input. And I'm so excited that we actually have people here because we are going to do a little poll right now. So in our next slide, if you want to either get out your phone or just use your laptop, this is my first Mentimeter. I know that they're used in other Bristol presentations, but it's my first, and I've got my fingers crossed it works. So before we go off this screen, if you will please go to menti.com and use the code 1158 2524, or if you're super tech savvy and you have a QR reader, you can go right to that QR code. It should work. We're going to leave this up for a little bit just so you get it. And then Melissa can maybe put the menti.com and the code in the chat when we turn the screen off, because I'm going to be sharing my screen so we can see people's answers. But we want to know from you, what makes you feel powerless? And we're not trying to start on a negative foot, but it's really hard to find solutions when we don't know what the problems are yet. So we need to identify the barriers and the challenges first. So this is kind of a self-reflective, and you are more than welcome to identify more than one thing. So if you will, please go ahead and do that. And Melissa, you can put the menti.com and the code in our chat. And then I'll be able to share my screen because I want people to be able to read each other's comments, and we've got comments coming in now. So I'm going to go ahead and start sharing my screen. So you all are going to have to tell me if you see my screen. Do you see my Menti screen?
Yes.
You do. Okay, great. It's working.
I was just going to say, let's not jinx ourselves.
I know, but I needed to let Julie know it's working. She knows why I'm saying that. So what makes you feel powerless? So I'm just going to read these out loud while you all are thinking and maybe doing more than one. When I'm not being heard. Yeah, I agree. Feeling patronized, anxiety, and making mistakes. And I think making the mistakes, it's almost like a vicious cycle. You know, we make mistakes, we feel anxious, then we make mistakes. Like it's that rabbit hole. Feeling put on the spot to make a decision. And I just did that to you all. Oh my goodness. I made you make a decision to chat something. I'm so sorry.
Oh, that was me, Kit. That's okay.
Okay. Oh, okay. And I do know my audience. Without time to think something through. When what I say is dismissed and not discussed. I love it. I'm just going to give maybe another minute in case anybody else wants to chime in, add anything else. That would be awesome. I don't see anything else coming through, but the feedback, I love it. Thank you for sharing that. It's sometimes difficult for us to express what makes us feel not whole or not correct. But you've brought up so many great points. And I love the fact feeling patronized, making mistakes, not being heard, being dismissed, being put on the spot. Those fit fabulously into our conversation today. So I actually really appreciate this because you all didn't know what we were going to discuss today, and you brought up a lot of great points. So I thank you for that. Thank you for taking that time to share that with us. So before we talk a little bit about key elements, and I believe, Melissa, can you just remind me, is our video the next slide?
I think we have one slide before the video.
Is it the key element slide?
It is.
Okay, so let me just see if you all can see my screen right now. Can you see my screen that says defining self-advocacy?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can. The technology heavens have opened up. Thank you so much. We're going to watch about a 6-minute video, but remember the elements of 3, the power of 3, and that's what I like to call it, the power of 3. What is self-advocacy? What is it that can help us feel more powerful over our own issues? You know, when we think that we're going to control someone else, maybe that makes some of us feel powerful. That's not really being powerful, okay? That's more of being more of a bully. Some of you said being patronized, being dismissed. You know, that's when someone's being powerful over you. How can we be powerful over ourselves? Well, in order to do that, we need to understand what advocacy is for our own self. And this is something that I think as a student, we might not really understand, that it is okay to advocate for yourself. There are positive ways of doing it and proactive ways of doing it. And then there's some dismissive ways and some not so nice ways of doing it. And we want to ensure that we're being proactive and positive and not demeaning. But understanding your own needs, understanding what it is that you need help with, just being able to identify that might be just a to-do list for yourself, thinking out loud, talking to your best friend, going to your advisor, a counselor. Maybe someone needs to help you find out what your needs are, but just even identifying that first is what is so important. Then the art of communicating to others what you need. I mean, communication is an art. How we communicate in elementary school, middle school, high school is so incredibly different than how we need to communicate when we get to college. how we need to communicate when we're in class with our instructors. We need to understand the differences of how we communicate. Technology is awesome, but we tend to hide behind the screen. We do a lot of texting, we do a lot of emailing, and people can't see our face, and we might be very angry. And sometimes those angry words come out, and we end up not really advocating for ourselves, but we point fingers with our words, or we blame with our words, when what we really intended to do was ask a simple question like, when is this due? Or can you please help me on this? But instead it came out as some kind of an angry text. So that communicating is really, really important. And then knowing what kind of support might help you. And Amanda is really going to shed some light on that today when we do a little Q&A panel. But knowing what kind of support is actually out there for us and how it can help us, that's really key as well. So I wanted to share a video with you. So again, can you see my screen of a cute face? Awesome. Wow, things are going pretty well today for me. Now we hope that sound will work, right? I want to share a video with you, and I'm going to put it on full screen right now, and then I'll put on closed captions in a minute. This is Jessica McCabe. Nope, she's not my best friend, but I wish she was. She has a blog. She's done a lot of TED Talks. I'll give you a little bit of a history just so you can understand where she comes from when she speaks with college students. And a lot of her blogs are about college students. This is an extremely high achieving individual who in 3rd grade was reading at a 12th grade level. She was just surpassing her friends and her peers academically. So she kind of sailed through school, and things came easy to her. In college, she struggled enormously, and she's one of those victims of dropout because she didn't know how to navigate the world. She didn't know how to ask questions because she had that anxiety when put on the spot, when she felt dismissed. She just didn't know how to handle it. She didn't know what kind of help to get. She didn't know the questions to ask. So what else should she do? Drop out. So her whole being is about trying to help advocate for college students, to let them know that it is okay to speak up for yourself. So this video, it's about 6 minutes long, is about assertive communication. And there's some really great tools that she gives. So hopefully we can hear the sound. I'd love to see a thumbs up, especially Amanda, because I can see your face right now if you can hear the sound.
I asked you to leave comments with specific situations you'd like to know how to handle, and you did. Then I researched tips and tricks to make being assertive in those situations easier and more effective. Before I get into those, a quick recap of what assertive communication is. Assertive communication is expressing our feelings and needs clearly and honestly while respecting the feelings and needs of others. You can learn more in this video, but basically, if passive communication is like being a doormat and aggressive communication is like treating somebody else like a doormat, assertive communication is like knocking. Why does anybody have to be a doormat? Just let each other in. There's only one problem. Assertive communication comes naturally to absolutely nobody. It's a learned skill. It takes practice. And it's scary to ask for what we need. What if we get rejected? What if they don't care what we need? What if we don't even know what our needs are? If any of this sounds familiar, here are 5 tips I've found to make assertive communication easier. 1. Learn to recognize and name your feelings. A lot of the time when we tell people how we feel, we're actually making judgments about them. I feel like you hate me. I feel disrespected. I feel ignored. While these might be based on feelings, they aren't feelings. Feelings are internal. What we're actually expressing is our evaluations of their behavior, which the other person may totally disagree with and therefore try to argue or dismiss, which might be what's happening in Elizabeth's situation. Her mom is open to hearing what she wants and how she feels, but then gets frustrated and shuts down conversation when Elizabeth voices her opinion. Instead of, when you don't call, I feel like you hate me. What can help is to focus on our actual feelings as opposed to our thoughts about those feelings. When you don't call, I feel anxious and lonely. That's a lot harder to argue with. If you're not comfortable talking about your feelings, which let's face it, most of us aren't, easy exercise. Grab the nearest human and take turns naming random feelings. Happy, sad, annoyed, ecstatic. Use a thesaurus if you run out of ideas. Bitter, exasperated, furious, impassioned. Then try to recognize and name your feelings when they come up. I feel bored. I feel excited. When I do this exercise, I feel silly. I promise it's worth it. 2, learn to recognize and name what you need. This is a challenge because a lot of the time we don't know what our needs are. We might think we just need somebody to do the dishes when what we actually need is for them to take on a more equal share of the chores. We might think we need someone we're dating to text more when what we really need is to feel secure in our relationship. So for this tip, practice looking for the need behind the need. Start with something you need, then dig deeper. Why do I need this? If you need a day off work because your friend is in town, great, just ask for a day off work. But if you need a day off work because you're burnt out from working 80-hour weeks, when what you really need might be a more sustainable work schedule. And addressing that need in one difficult conversation with your boss can prevent 20 future ones. We don't have to tell people everything, but another benefit of getting to the bottom of our needs is that people are generally more supportive of our solutions if they understand why we need them. 3, start with low stakes situations. If you're shy about practicing assertive communication, you can do what Chris suggests. Start with safe people and easy situations. Let your best friend know you have a headache and ask them to turn down the music. Ask the friendly waiter for extra whipped cream on your waffles without apologizing. This can make you feel empowered and build up your communication skills and confidence, which can prepare you for more difficult situations like when the stakes are higher or there are power dynamics at play, like talking to your boss. I'll link to a great TEDx talk about this. 4, be aware of your body. Communication isn't just the words we use, it's also our body language and tone. If we're using assertive language while standing over somebody who's sitting, it can come across as aggressive. If our tone is timid, it can come across as passive. If we're sobbing or screaming, it's hard to get taken seriously. ADHD can make it hard to regulate our emotions. As Azure puts it, our reactions can be extreme. And as we get more emotional, our cognitive ability declines. So there's kind of a point of no return after which it's basically impossible for us to make rational decisions like step away from a toxic conversation. But if we're at least aware of our tone of voice, we can change it to better suit the situation. And being aware of our body can help us recognize when we start to get upset, which can be a good cue to step away before we hit that point of no return. Finally, 5, don't wait. It's important that we speak up about situations that are problematic for us as early as possible before they become a regular occurrence, especially if someone is mistreating or taking advantage of us. For example, last week I visited a friend from another country and it was great. The only problem was that she was putting me down all the time and I didn't say anything about it. I thought, well, it doesn't matter that much. It doesn't hurt me that much. It isn't a big deal. But the problem with this was that she was saying meaner and meaner things because I accepted them. When we don't call out behavior that hurts us, it tends to continue and even get worse. And once it's already part of the relationship dynamic, it's a lot harder to change. The same is true of our needs. If we establish a relationship where we're always putting the other person's needs first, even if it's for a good reason, it's not sustainable for us. It also leaves us open to being taken advantage of. It's good to be understanding of other people's limitations, but it's important to remember that we have limitations too. If we're clear about those early in a relationship, it's a lot easier to make sure everyone's needs are taken into consideration moving forward. That's 5 tips for making assertive communication easier. Of course, we can't control people. Needs conflict, and everybody's an individual who may react differently. So assertive communication doesn't guarantee we'll get what we want. In fact, in healthy relationships, we won't always get what we want. But if we're regularly assertive in our communication, we'll get what we need. Thank you to my brain ad.
All right, so I'm going to stop right there. And I'm going to just stop sharing for a moment because I'm going to go ahead and let Melissa do the rest with the screen sharing. But any comments related to the topics, the information, how this is helpful for faculty, for staff, for students? You can unmute or chat if you have any thoughts.
It really just kind of sets the playing field. I was going to say stage, but technically you don't play on the stage. You usually play on the field. But yeah, it sets the playing field. It's a very hard thing to do. She is 100% correct. Is that it's not something you're born with, if anything. You definitely have to kind of learn through time exactly how to address those things, because she is right. If you continue to allow bad behavior because you just don't believe that it's really doing much harm to you, that's going to cause a snowball effect, and it's actually going to cause a lot more harm than you think. And I find too that when you allow things like that to happen, when you finally do get enough guts to tell the person, they tend to feel like that you've had plenty of chances to say something before, so now they may not be more receptive to that information because they feel as though now you're making yourself some type of victim, when in the beginning you should have just mentioned it. But like I tell my sisters and any other woman that I speak with, that it's not a trait that is learned. It really is something that we are not taught. We're not really taught to address our feelings. But I thought that that was great.
Thanks so much for sharing that, Amanda. That's really important because, you know, even when Jessica was talking about relationships, we need to remember that everything that we do with other people is a relationship. She wasn't just talking about romance. It could be a friend relationship. It could be a teacher relationship, a parent relationship, sibling. And we just need to remember that the whole point being is understand what you need out of this. And if you're not getting what you think you need, there are positive ways of addressing this. And for our students, when we have those challenges in our classroom, with faculty, with staff, with other peers who are with us, you know, what do we do about that? So what we wanted to do next, we're going to have a little bit of an open forum. So we just had, this was just kind of a placeholder for us, if you will, because we will stop screen sharing so that we can all kind of look at each other. If you want your camera on, that's fine. But we want to have a little open forum about asking some questions about those three key elements. Knowing, you know, how do we know what we want? How do we communicate? And what do we, you know, where do we go or who do we go to? So what we're going to do here is Melissa's going to be our moderator, and she's got some key questions for us. And we would love to have our audience participate with this. Definitely we have Amanda's point of view, which is awesome. Kylie, I invite you at any time, not to put you on the spot, but you didn't put on the spot in our Mentimeter. That was Allison. So I will not do that to Allison. That is fine. But we would love different perspectives from these questions. So Melissa, if you want to go ahead and stop screen sharing, just so everyone knows that this is really now an open forum. And please, we welcome you to unmute, chat, whatever. But we're going to go ahead with our first question.
Yeah, thank you, Kit. So we thought it would be good to start with kind of effective, assertive communication and self-advocacy questions. So the first question I'm going to present to the group is, how do you build the confidence to speak up for yourself? And that can be personal or in the classroom, in a friend group, however you want to take that.
So I can go first, just because, you know, sometimes my nerves like to just get myself out there, you know, as quick as possible. So first, as the video had said, it is a very true thing. Learning to advocate for yourself really is a lifelong task. I had never understood how true this was until the last meeting that I was in at BCC, where the dean at Attleboro had mentioned that in different situations, your ability to communicate can change. Like if you're in a room full of, you know, people that, you know, may have some similarity to you, whether it be a degree in the same field or things like that, the disclosing what you need, it becomes easier. Whereas if there isn't really some type of similarity between you. Generally for me, I tend to go with the fact that I cannot make everyone happy in the world. I can only do that for myself. So I will usually go into a situation that I may not have been in before and advocate for myself by letting people know that this is my first time at an event like this. And I apologize if I may say or do something that may not seem right, because I'm generally, I think the word is naive in that sense. So I just kind of tend to say what it is that I feel that I can say, and I try to put it nicely, as nice as possible when I first start out.
Thanks, Amanda.
I have something to share, but I don't want to also take up the time. So I welcome, oh, Kylie, beautiful, go for it.
I agree with Allison, what she said in the chat. Whenever I work with my students, I always have them like talk it over, like, oh, what are you going to say to your professor? Oh, what are you going to write in the email? And we kind of just work together to try to incorporate the self-advocacy for themselves. I also ask them what they're comfortable with. Also, like if they want me to reach out and I CC them in the email, or just one step at a time to see what their comfort level is.
Love it. That is, I think, pivotal. So I appreciate that, Kylie. I could give all the most wonderful suggestions in the world, but one of the key questions I've learned to ask people is, are you open to doing this? And it invites them without making them feel like, can you do this? Well, yeah, I can, but do I want to? No. So, saying, can you is ability. Are you open to something is inviting them to say no if they don't want to do it. And I think that's part of that power. I wanted to share my little, what I do sometimes when I know that there's going to be something difficult coming up, I go for a walk with my dogs and I talk out loud. So my neighbors all think I'm a little bit of a freak because I'm talking to nobody. But you know what? Because we all have earbuds now, I could just say, oh, I'm on the phone. When really I'm not. I'm talking out loud. But I think talking out loud, one of the things I always say is when you talk out loud, you hear yourself. When you hear yourself, it goes into memory. And that's a really key skill. Even with study skills, that's really important. When we're just reading something or thinking something, it's not being heard. We need to think of our senses. So the more we can talk out loud, even in a room by ourselves, we're hearing it, we're registering it a little bit better, and it becomes a little bit more automatic. So I just wanted to share that, but I welcome if anyone else has anything to say, go for it. Otherwise, we'll just keep on going.
Yeah, I was going to say, Kit, that kind of leads us into our next question. And the comment by Susan in the chat does as well, is that was a great tool and skill kind of to work on self-advocacy. Does anybody else have anything that you've learned along the way to help yourself kind of advocate for yourself, or tools that you use? I know in the chat, somebody had wrote that when they have something to say and they don't want to get flustered, they'll write it down so that they make sure to get their point across. I'm personally one of those people too. I like to have kind of what I'm outline of what I'm going to say so that I make sure I get all the points and I don't get too nervous that I miss something. But I wanted to give the opportunity if anybody else has any tips or things that they do. And if not, that's okay. We can go on to the next one as well. So the next question we had for the group is, if you could go back and talk to your first semester self, what are some tips you would tell yourself? And for faculty and staff, if you didn't want to go back to a college as a student, maybe your first, couple weeks on your job, what would you come back and tell yourself?
Can I actually say something on this one? Because I was laughing when I wrote down my answer. Besides if I could go back in time and tell my first semester self, I would first off tell my first semester self, you're going to be a teacher. That's it. Nothing else. Because I think I've changed my major like 7 times in the last 3 or 4 years alone, because I just wasn't sure. But the advice that I would give myself is, this isn't it. You're not done yet. Like, keep going. Like, you're going to be fine. It's going to, for a lack of a better word, it's going to suck for a bit, but you just need to keep going.
I love that. That's wise words, right? Wise words like this is not the end of the world. It will get better. Even if what's going on right now just feels horrific, it will get better. And I love what Allison wrote. And boy, this was me yesterday. Susan saw what happened to me yesterday. I had a difficult conversation and it wasn't bad. It just put a lot of strain on me, that kind of thing. Allison, you had your hand raised.
I was actually clapping for Amanda's comment.
Yay.
Yeah, I mean,
my
sometimes,
heart for yours, you know, I'm like, "Ooh."
but yeah, I mean, sometimes like when things are hard, we just tend to think they're bad or scary, which sometimes you just have to like keep perspective and think like, this isn't necessarily bad. I'm just uncomfortable right now.
Sometimes the language that we use, and that's the whole idea of assertive communication also for advocacy, is just some of the words that we use. If we could just reframe the question just a little bit differently. And, you know, I was talking with a college student last night. She's in grad school, but, you know, she's like, oh, when people text me, I get so overwhelmed because then I have to text them back. And I said, think of it this way. Instead of saying, oh, they're texting me, I'm so overwhelmed, say to yourself, oh my gosh, look at that. They're thinking of me right now. Oh, someone stopped what they were doing to think of me. And so, you know, kind of put it in that positive spin as well. So sometimes, you know, we are our own worst critic. So sometimes just reframing how we think. I'm going to be very vain right now, if you will. I know that might be hard to believe, but if I had to go back and tell my first semester self in college, was that please don't worry about how you look. Please don't let how you look, your weight, your hair, don't let that get in the way of who you really are, you know, because you are so much more than this physical shelf. There's so much in you. There's so much knowledge and interest and talent. And that's what people see. And I think sometimes our college students say, you know, they come from high school where maybe they were popular and they were with that crowd for so many years. So when they get to college, they're in a sea of so many different fish. And I think we just need to remind them, like, you are as fabulous as everybody else on this campus. And don't let that get in the way of your dreams and your journey. And that's probably what I would have loved to have heard in my freshman year.
Mine too.
Yeah, I love that.
I also think to tell yourself, you know, don't let past bad experiences influence or failures influence you going forward. Sometimes that clouds your experience and your judgment, and you're afraid to speak up, or you just already are starting to second guess yourself because of previous, you know, high school experience or whatever. Because when you were just talking about worrying about how you look or your hair or your body, well, I was an adult coming back to college, so I didn't go right from high school to college. So I had a whole other set of concerns, you know, of how people would look at me. So I like that you mentioned that not to worry, you know, about what other people are going to think of how you look or what you say or how you learn. You're there for you. So thank you.
I love it. Thanks for sharing, Susan. That's great. And
Yeah.
unfortunately, even as an adult going back for my graduate work, you know, I still had the insecurities that I thought were getting in the way. And I'm like, are you kidding me? I'm spending way too much money in college to be worrying about what I look like. It's my studies that are important. This is what's paving my way. And so we all have our own little, you know, shells about us. Why don't we go ahead to the next question, Melissa, if that's okay?
Sure. I'm just, before we go, I know that Kylie put her hand up, so I'll let one more person jump on and then I'll go to the next.
Thank you. Sorry about that, Kylie. Didn't see it.
It's okay. I was just going to say, I love this question. Recently in my master's program in December, one of my professors actually had us do a reflection paper on writing a letter to ourselves. And I loved it because it really helps to like self-reflect. And I think I would tell my former self, and when I first started at Bristol, that it's okay not to know, and like, because college, you're figuring out who you are. So it's okay to not know who you are yet. And like being a first year student. And And I was like a first generation college student, so I always struggled in navigating college and stuff. So it's okay not to know, and you're going to do great, and you're going to build so much confidence.
I agree, Kylie. I think that would be something I would tell myself too, that the secret of college is that nobody has it figured out, even though you think you're the only one who's completely lost. So I agree. If I could go back, that would be something that I would say. And this kind of goes into what our next question is too. Now that, you know, we've all kind of formulated communication strategies that work for us, which are the key strategies that you'll use to benefit you as you go on to your educational journey, or if you're going into a job right after this? What are some key communication strategies that you use that you think you'll continue to use moving forward?
So this really, you know, for non-students, just how do we use these communication strategies for the next potential hurdle, challenge, you know, the next place that we go, the next relationship that we have, anything that has struck out to you that you would really like to use?
So I wrote down a quote that I had heard from a professor at BCC. I don't think he knows that I quoted him because he kind of said it in a meeting, and it just like, wow, that's good. But to give the credit to Professor Alejandro Latinas, I think it's how you pronounce it. He is the Portuguese professor here at BCC. And I had been a part of the Latinx male experience meeting that they had on October 21st. And he said, always pursue what you want, even when it appears to not be worth it. So my idea on communication strategies moving forward is that I just have to get through these next few things to reach my end goal. And I will try to be as assertive as possible, because sometimes it is going to get hard, and sometimes I'm not going to want to do what I have to do, but I got to do it anyway.
Thanks, Amanda. And I love that you wrote that quote down. I'm like that too. I write down things that I think I'm going to need.
And I just put the quote, I might have chopped it up a little bit. I put the quote in the chat also. I think that's great. Yeah, we never know when something is, what's worth it. You know, how do we know? We can't predict the future. We're living in the now, you know, but we just never know what bridges we're going to cross later on in life, and how something might come back like, oh, I am so glad I went to that person. I'm so glad I reached out about this. I love it. Anyone else have anything before we get on to our last little segment? And if not, we can just go ahead to our next one, which is really the where to go and who to go to kind of element of all of this.
Yeah, and for time's sake, I'll kind of mush the two questions we had together, but what either in-class resources or out-of-class resources have you assessed to help when you needed support that have been beneficial to you?
Amanda, I know you had something to say.
I
Go
kind
for
of
it.
did, and I was going in to press to unmute myself, and I kept hitting everything else, and I'm like, ah. So for me personally, in-class resources, I tend to find that, you know, that I would reach out to other classmates. I'm not generally somebody that shies away from reaching out to the professor. Like I'm taking 4 courses in the summer, and 2 out of, technically speaking, she's the professor of 2 of the 4 classes. So technically 2 professors had gotten back to me. I got the syllabus back from one, and then the other one said that she doesn't update the syllabus until mid-May, which I'm perfectly fine with that. You know, I thanked her for her time, but I generally don't shy away from speaking with my professor, because I'm an adult just like them. I have a life just like they do. So I feel like, you know, that if I want, a little bit of like a head start, I think it'll be okay. But some of the things that I did outside of class, first, I wanted to give credit to Dr. Bridget Arrow, because I had gone to Bristol Community College's therapy services back when I was pregnant, and she was the therapist that I've seen. And she was the one who told me that therapy is not a bad thing. So after I left her, I had then seek therapy outside. I was in therapy up until a couple months ago. I did find my own faith. So I do go to church, I open the Bible, things like that. So those are my outside resources to try to get myself to feel better about anything that I may not feel so good about. The gym, vitamins, having a friend that I could talk to, that I could literally just text anything I want, and she'll just listen, and she's always in my corner, was a big help for me as well.
Thank you so much, Amanda. I know you shared a lot. Thank you for sharing, personal as well as collegiate experiences, because that's really important. As a faculty member, not at Bristol, but I am a faculty member elsewhere. One of the things I stress with my students every semester, I work in a teacher preparation program, and it's high stakes. It's a 3+1 where they can get their master's in 4 years. So it's a fast moving program, but I really let them know, instructors, professors, we want students to succeed, but they need to put in that work. They need, they are as responsible for accessing all of the materials, within Blackboard or Canvas or whatever the tool is to use. But there is a reason we have office hours. And I think that's probably a very underutilized tool that students use. We go through the syllabus, or maybe we don't go through the syllabus. Maybe we just try and find out when the midterm and the final are, and then we close it, never look back at it. That syllabus is a great calendar and planning tool, but I think finding out when office hours are is so important, because that is a time to ask questions. If you were in person but afraid to raise your hand, if you're on Zoom and you don't want to type it in the chat because you're embarrassed, what an awesome time to have either that one-on-one or small group with your instructor to just, first of all, let them see your face, let them know who you are. And by going to those office hours, it's also letting the instructor know you are invested. Instructors love when their students are invested. So it's really a win-win all around. And so I think that's an underutilized strategy and communication strategy that is used probably across most of our colleges. But I would love to see that more at Bristol. So that's my 2 cents. Anybody else?
Well, maybe I can pull up the final slide that we have, and it might, if you're thinking this slide kind of goes with what we were just speaking about. So if you have any strategies, just let us know, but I will be aware of time.
So how we wanted to end this, first of all, we want to thank all of you for sharing your experiences and your input and your ideas. After our sessions that we have, we always give materials to those, or resources to those who attend. So I know, Melissa, you have a list of everybody's emails, right? So you'll be getting part of this presentation, including the video, but this is toward the end of our presentation, and these are actually live links. And I updated them today because two of the links were broken. And of course, the Multicultural Center was one of them, of course, but I updated all the links. And these aren't all of our departments, obviously. And so we weren't trying to like, oh, these are the best departments. The whole purpose was these tend to be very resourceful departments for our students, whether it's, looking for that financial support or advising, childcare, Office of Disabilities, Women's Center, whatever, where everything is right here. So you're not going through, the Bristol website, which can get hairy sometimes when you don't know what you're looking for, right? We said in the very beginning, we don't know what we don't know. And so sometimes we don't know how to ask for help. Well, here I've got the quick links right here to to departments or to find out more about them on our website. So we'll be sharing this with you along with parts of our presentation. And in addition to that, you're going to be receiving a document that I've created that kind of combines all of these strategies for success presentations that I've given. My student success coaches know about it, so Kylie knows about it, but I created, it's like a resource list that talks about a resource. It describes what it is. It gives a live link to that resource. And then it just tells you, is it a video? Is it an app? Is it a tutorial? And they're all things that can just be student focused or even instructor focused. There's a lot of great things on there for instructors to use as well. So we just, knowledge is power. So we wanted you to have, this information to share with students, to share with your colleagues and your peers. But we hope that by maybe further diving into how we can advocate for ourselves, how we can feel a little bit more powerful, just by knowing that there are people out there are departments out there, there's ways to communicate to make us feel more powerful. And that was really the intention for today. So I know our last slide is our thank you slide, but I wanted to know if anybody had any final comments or input or ideas to send us off.
The only thing I wanted to say is that it looks like, I think it's Pascal, Professor Pascal, I think it's who that is. The background is absolutely incredibly enticing. Like, I wish that was my background.
Yes, thank you. I'm a student. I just graduated high set, so.
Oh, welcome.
Well,
Pascal.
welcome.
Thank you. And we do love your background. It's a powerful communication tool. It lets us know where you would like to be. We love it. And Allison, it's hard to advocate when you are a naturally shy or reserved person. Exactly. And the video that we saw, Jessica, that was her. She was that shy person or that naturally reserved person, but knew that she had a lot to give. So communication is a learned skill for sure. And that's why knowing where to go or who to go for help, they can help be your communication tool. And so we hope that by giving you these resources today kind of helps build your power to go to those people. So thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. We really appreciate it. We appreciate your positive candor and sharing. So thank you. And we hope that you all have a great rest of the semester.